So, Colt, forgive me if I'm a little rusty because it's been a while, not only since I've done a podcast, but since I've done a game. In fact, in the last 2 months, you have called more games than I have. My last TV game was Phoenix-Denver Game 6, and then I did Eastern Conference Finals for ESPN Radio. But still, that ended before your 2 games for NBC. First, tell me about that experience. And I've worked with a lot of – I actually did NFL Europe like 20 years ago, and they would have current players as analysts. Yeah. And a lot of guys after that were like, I'm never doing this again. Or some were like, I can't wait to do this again. Where are you?
Yeah, that is crazy. Yeah, I called a couple USFL games in June. And you know what? Outside of the travel, I had to travel to Canton, Ohio, and Memphis, both cool towns. But just you were in the middle of OTAs. So I would leave on probably Friday after a Monday through Thursday week. My wife loved that. And just trying to navigate how to get there. A couple of my flights got canceled. I ended up getting to Canton, Ohio at like 2 a.m. And then there was a Saturday game with a noon kickoff. And so I missed like the production meetings and, all the stuff that goes on before the actual game. But once I got in the studio, I loved calling the games. Like I didn't know how I was going to feel during it or afterwards, but I really enjoyed that vantage point and talking to Paul Burmeister. I actually had him both times. He was fantastic. He helped me a ton along the way. Our verbal communication skills were pretty good. We had a great time together, and calling those games was fun. I just enjoyed seeing both sides of the field. You're talking defense. When you play a football game, you go out there and try to execute everything as well as you can. Then you come off to the side and, you look at the iPad, you get a little break. You kind of talk about what's coming up next, and then you go back out there and do it. And you might get 7, 8, 9 drives a game. During a broadcast, there is no break. Like I had a 2-minute bathroom break at halftime because in the TV timeouts, the producer's in your ear. At halftime, you're giving a recap. You're talking about what's coming next. All the pregame stuff, you're prepping and you got your board out in front of you and you're making sure you're good with all the names and what the talking points. I mean, it was a ton of fun. Like I could see myself, if I had the opportunity, down the road to call some games. I think I would really enjoy it.
And you were saying that before the first game, I think we were texting about this, the power went out in the booth right before you guys went on the air?
Yes.
Everything went down?
Dude, there was a 45-minute delay of the kickoff because the entire system was down. So, obviously the producers and those guys are in studio back wherever that is. But all the equipment at the game went out. The generator went out. The backup generator went out. I don't know what was. All I know is that the kickoff was delayed. Guys are ready to warm up, and they go back inside. And, it was my first game, and so I didn't really know any different. It ended up being me and Paul just calling the game like we saw it. You can kind of throw out all your preparation. The cool thing about the USFL is you get the quarterback and head coach or play caller communication. So you can hear the play calls. And you can hear the quarterback step in the huddle and call the play. And as a guy who's played quarterback for a while, you can, by the end of the first quarter, second quarter, you can pick up like what some of these plays are and be able to talk about them. And I had done some film study on both of these teams. I had a pretty good idea of what their offenses were like, and that was out the window, right? The telestrator that I had tried to practice on, and you draw up a few things, and I hear a play. I know what this play is. Let me let me draw it up real quick. That was out. So me and Paul just called the game like we saw it, and I thought it went great. Like I didn't have the equipment, but I was kind of nervous about using that kind of stuff anyways. And afterwards, the producers and everyone were just like, it's never like this. Like, don't worry about it. Like, that was really hard. I was like, hey, I thought it was great. Like, I enjoyed it.
Well, if you can get through that and you can do a USFL game where you don't know who a lot of the players are going into it, and you can do anything. It gets. I have always felt it gets much easier the higher level you do because you know who the players are,
right?
As opposed to you may have known some of the names, but it's not like their household names, and there's probably not a lot of film on these guys for you to study.
Yeah, you're mostly just watching games. There's a lot of faces that you recognize, though, especially from coaches. You see coaches that you've played against or maybe played with that are still coaching, and then there's 4 or 5 guys on each team that I had remembered, maybe playing with in a preseason or playing against that you remember their names. Like it's still good football.
You're used to having somebody in your ear as a quarterback, although 15 seconds on the play clock, that stops. How often did the producer talk to you right before you were going to speak, and how did you handle having that voice in your ear?
Yeah, it's definitely unique, right? Because most of the time that he's talking to you, you're already talking. You're in your 6 to 7 seconds, giving the recap of what just happened on that play, and he's either talking to you about, I want you to use the telestrator, tell me a little bit more, expand on this, highlight number 48, whatever, as you're talking. So that part is hard because, it took me a first half probably to get used to that. But then it's almost like, okay, I expect this. Like, let me follow whatever the producer's lead is and where he wants me to go, because he's certainly trying to take care of me. He's certainly trying to help me. He's not trying to throw me off. And, different than, if I have the play caller calling a play to me right now, into my headset, like I can give one wave and just tell him I got it. I got the play, like we're good. And I'm never stepping in the huddle and calling the play while he's still talking in my ear. Like that would be crazy. So the communication, I think the more you do it, the more you get used to it. It was certainly there were some growing pains at first, but it was still a ton of fun. I mean, when I got in the booth and I called the games, and you get in a flow with the play-by-play guy, with Paul, it was fun.
So between the broadcasting and obviously the off-season work with the team and now, did you get a chance to relax? Do you feel refreshed? Do you have a particular routine that you do in the off-season leading up to training camp?
Yeah. No, I feel like I'm in a really good place. I think there was a little carryover into this off-season from the end of the year last year, right? Played through a bunch of injuries. Had the concussion against Denver and missed the last couple games, and then all your coaches get fired. The front office, a lot of those guys get let go, and I think there's just the NFL is hard no matter how long you've played. I played for 14 years, and I've seen a lot of different things, and last year was just really tough, right? Like we had tons of high expectations across the board going into the season last year, and we worked really hard, and you guys start getting hurt and in key positions, and you lose a couple games, and it just kept getting worse and worse and worse and worse all year, and then it ultimately ended with some of my best friends and people that I love and care about and are close with get fired, right? And so then you have a little off-season surgery, and it just those things just add up emotionally. And I think when the off-season started, I wasn't in a great place because I was, physically I was getting better and better each day, and I felt better, but emotionally I just was still, I don't know what the word would be, probably just sad. Were you in a fog? Just a little bit of a funk? Or? A little bit of a funk, a little bit of a fog. Like you work so hard to, make something happen. And I know that there's a lot of guys in this building who felt the same way. And, you're sad when it doesn't work out because we give our life to this, right? And so after the off-season program, it was still good. I still, we're learning a new system. We've got new guys, new faces. They're all great. I love them all. And I love the energy that this new staff brings, that Monty brings. It by no means does it have anything to do with that? It was just, it's all new, and there's a learning process that has to take place. And I think this break was really good for me, right? I was able to get away, and I was able to just spend some time with my family. I worked really hard, and it just allowed me to just mentally and emotionally get in the right state of, hey, I know what it takes to, get ready for another season in the NFL. This is a hard game. This is tough. Like, there's nothing easy about it. There's long days. There's hard days. There's good days. It's physical. It's emotionally draining sometimes. Like, being able to be above all that and handle all of that and the workload, and understanding that the ultimate goal is to go out there and win. Without winning, it's not successful. Like, that takes a lot, and I feel like this break really helps me get into that mode, and I feel like I'm in a really, really good place as we get started here, and I'm also really excited.
Good. We always get out of the country when I'm done, because I go like 9.5 months hard travel, and so traveling for me in the U.S. is work. So we try to get out of the country for a few weeks, and we do that pretty much every summer. But I always try to do one new thing, like learn something new or do something different each summer. I didn't this summer. One thing I thought about trying, and I've never liked it, is country music. Sell me on why I should start listening to country music as my new thing. Because summer is not officially over, Colt. There's still time.
There's still time. Well, I'm a big country music guy, man. Sorry to tell you.
I know you are. That's why I'm asking.
But I will say that, I grew up that way, right? I grew up listening to 90s country, and if any song of Brooks and Dunn or George Strait or Garth Brooks or Kenny Chesney, if any of that comes on, I know all the words, and that's just what we listened to when I was growing up. And in fact, I think I probably like 90s country a little better than the country that's out there right now. But all the folks are good. Like,
those guys you mentioned, I have heard of. I just couldn't tell you any of their songs.
I mean, you hear George Strait on the radio, you got to tip your cap. This is how it goes.
You do that while you're in the car? You're driving, you just tip the cap if it comes on? Is that part of the routine?
I make sure my kids see that too. Like, you know what you're listening to here.
Country royalty?
Yeah, for sure. He's king of country.
So should I start there, or should I start with the newer country singers?
Well, probably the newer country singers. I mean, these guys are very talented. I mean, country music nowadays has a little bit faster beat, a little bit better rhythm. You can, it's not pop, but it's, it's still country. And then just dip your toe into like some of the old school stuff, like some of the 90s country, maybe go a little further back and give you a little Willie Nelson and Waylon Jennings, and go down that path and just see what you like.
All right.
I'll give it a shot. I don't think you'll be disappointed.
No, I mean, look, I just have never been able to get into it, but I haven't had a lot of friends that listen to it either. My wife doesn't listen to it, so
I think it's just kind of part of like where you grow up.
Yeah,
what you listen to as a kid, what your parents listen to, what your friends listen to, and then it kind of just go from there.
All right. Well, I listened to a lot.
Try something new. You'll like it.
Well, I said that's usually each summer there's a goal of something different. Summer's not officially over, so maybe we'll try it. Mm-hmm. One thing you used to do in the off season back when you were younger was attend Manning camp. And one of my best friends in the world, who is the same age as you, who I worked with for 4 years and has moved up the ladder at ESPN as the number 2 college football analyst, is Greg McElroy. Mm-hmm. And I believe you, Greg, Sam Bradford, and Andrew Luck all roomed together one summer. And I also believe that 2 of the 4 were very delinquent. And the other 2, and you were one of these 2, were at home, sleeping, as you should, getting your rest, being serious. One of the delinquents might have been Greg, and the other might have been Andrew. Is that true?
That is great. That is great that you dug all that up. Bradford was my roommate. Sam and I were same class. I never actually attended the Manning Academy camp like as a camper, but I did go as a counselor. They usually grab 4, 5, 6 guys maybe that are in their junior or senior year to come out and work the camp, and I think that's a really, really cool tradition. I know they're still doing it now. I mean, you're going out there to, I think it's Thibodaux, Louisiana, and it is hot. Like, we can complain all we want about, oh, it's 115 degrees out here. Like, no, it's down there. It is humid and hot, and the kids do not care, and it's a ton of fun, and the Mannings do it the right way. I remember landing in New Orleans, and Arch would pick us up and would drive us down and explain to the camp, and it's gonna be fun. And, Colt, you and Sam are gonna room together, and then all of a sudden, you do the camp, and then there's a lot of extracurricular activities throughout the rest of the week,
which had nothing to do with football, from what I understand.
The only rule is you gotta be back ready for camp the next morning, whatever happens. So. There's a lot of fun stories, a lot of getting to know guys, and it's a great time.
Fair. That's fine. You don't have to. I know the story, and I can't tell it anyway. So it's probably better that you don't. Speaking of college football, let's start with Texas, because obviously you're one of the Texas legends. You mentioned Archie. I think you were talking about right before.
Oh yeah, I meant to say Archie. Yeah, Arch. Yeah, Archie.
But Arch. Mm-hmm. Arch Manning is now at Texas. Quinn Ewers is the starter. What are you hearing about Arch? What are you hearing about that room and that team? Because they have a huge game week 2 against Alabama.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't stayed as plugged in as probably people think that I have. I went back to the spring game this year, took my kids. First time they had been in the stadium at UT, which was pretty awesome. We had a great time. They couldn't believe it. And the stadium wasn't even, fully sold out. It was the spring game, so it was still a ton of fun. But I got to spend some time with the quarterbacks, watch a practice or two, and I think their room is great. I would say that, good teams have good quarterback rooms, and those relationships are competitive, but they're also supportive, and that kind of infiltrates the rest of the team. And I think right now at UT you got a couple guys, probably 3 guys that could play, and I think it's a great healthy situation. I would think that Quinn would kind of start the season and be the guy, and build off some of the things that he did last year. There was some good, and some stuff needs to get cleaned up, and I'm sure he would say the same thing. But I just think a good, healthy quarterback room speaks a lot about your team, and I know Texas has that right now. And obviously, Arch is, the highest rated recruit of all time, probably, and a big deal that he's on campus, and the name recognition and who he is. And I've got to spend good amounts of time with him. He's just a class act, and he works hard, and doesn't want any favors. And he's come into UT so much more prepared and ready, and good head on his shoulders than I wasn't even close to that when I had to redshirt. I needed to mature, I needed to grow, I needed to spend a lot of time in the weight room. There was a lot of things that needed to happen for me, which ultimately did in order to play at UT. But I think if Texas needed Arch to play right now, I imagine he could.
And that's Cooper's son, correct?
That's correct.
For people that aren't sure, when they hear Manning, they don't know they usually assume it's Peyton or Eli, but it's Cooper's son.
Right, exactly.
I had Texas last year at Oklahoma State. That was not a good day for Quinn. But I'm a big Sark fan, and I'm really curious to see how they do this year and then obviously next year. The best quarterback I saw last year in person was Caleb Williams, for obvious reasons, at USC. The second best, and it was pretty close, and I did North Carolina twice, was Drake May. And obviously Mac Brown, who you're very close with, who was your coach at Texas, is the coach at North Carolina. I don't know how much you watched Drake May, because there's a lot of talk about the 2024 draft. Is it, who's going to be the first pick? Are they going to go 1-2, kind of like this year with Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud? I don't know how much Drake May you've watched or how much you've talked to Mac about him.
Yeah, no, Coach Brown loves Drake. He loves Sam Howell. I mean, he's had some good quarterbacks at North Carolina. And Coach Brown, I can only speak for myself, but Coach Brown expects a lot from his quarterback. And if you're going to play several years for him, like you're gonna get earfuls from Coach Brown. But I was so fortunate to play for him for 4 years, or really 5 because I redshirted, and have the same coach, right? And I think those quarterbacks, Drake, I think Sam Howell, like those guys are tremendous talents, but they benefit from having the same coach and helping them along the way. But from what Coach Brown has told me, it sounds like Drake is super talented, very competitive, played early. His brother, and I think his family are all like good athletes. I think his brother played basketball at North Carolina, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, he was on the national championship
Yeah,
team.
that's right.
Yeah.
Right. So Coach Brown just says like, they're big Tar Heels, like their whole family, like bleed blue or what do they call it, baby blue?
Carolina blue.
And so he thinks he's definitely an NFL quarterback, and I know that they changed coordinators, but they're expecting a really, really big year. And sounds like, I think I read where College Game Day is going there week 1.
Yes, they play South Carolina.
Yeah, they play
ABC
South Carolina
Yep.
week 1. So that'll be a good first test for those guys.
All right, last non-Cardinals one, and we'll start getting into this. But you and Kevin Durant connected all here this summer because you were at Texas the same time that Durant was. I've actually covered him since I did the McDonald's All-America game, like 3 years. The 1 year was him with Greg Oden, and everybody's talking about Oden, and there's this skinny kid at the time. KD was like 6'9". Obviously, he's sprouted. He's still listed, I think, at 6'9", but he's not.
Yeah.
And we were watching this guy, and again in high school, like, this dude is unbelievable. And then I did some of the Texas games that year, including a game when he had 37 points and 23 rebounds at Texas Tech, coached by Bob Knight. And then I've done his games, in the NBA. And I've always I always liked Kevin. My daughter, who's now 25, but her favorite player is Kevin Durant. For her 16th birthday, she wanted to meet him, so she came with me to do a game in Oklahoma City and got to meet him, and he could not have been nicer. So it's like people say don't meet your heroes, don't meet your idols, but she loves him even more. But you've known Kevin for a long time. You get a chance to connect at all?
Yeah. No, we were definitely acquaintances in college. He came in the year after me, but we lived in the same dorm, where all the athletes live. Like, I just remember like this super tall, skinny guy coming in, and no one really saying much, although he was like one of the highly touted recruits.
Oh yeah.
Coming out of college, he came up, from way up in the Northeast, and you don't really know much, and you go to like the first game over at the Irwin Center, and he drops like 40 points, and you're just like, oh my, this guy took the game over. Just a phenomenal basketball player, and obviously like he's won world championships, he's won MVP, like he's amazing. And we have not connected here in Phoenix. We've talked to each other back and forth a little bit. Hopefully I can get out to a game next year. I did go to one of the playoff games, saw him play. It wasn't good for us.
Was it the Game 6 loss to Denver?
Yeah,
because that was the game we did. That game that was rough.
I mean, yeah, Denver was just going to be hard to beat regardless. But I'm glad he's in the Valley, and he's a great dude. And Longhorns stay together.
It was. I hope for the Suns' sake and Suns fans' sake that was an anomaly. He barely played in the regular season because he got hurt. I had a coach tell me after that Game 6 loss that they were a little concerned because this coach thought he was struggling to get by people. And so my question was, have the injuries caught up to him? And this coach, again, his opinion, it's very possible. So I'm curious because he's 34, 35.
Right.
He was 18 when he came into the NBA. He was, I think, 17 the year he was at Texas. So he's young. But I'm curious, have all the injuries caught up to him? I hope not, because obviously living here in the Valley, I want the Suns to do well. All right. Go ahead. Were you going to say something
No,
else?
I mean, maybe. I don't know. I know that if the ball's in his hand, he's going to find a way to get in the bucket. I mean, whether he's lost a step or not, I think he's still one of the best at scoring.
He's one of the greatest scorers in the history of the game.
Right.
All right. In terms of the Cardinals, you talked about you're in a good place mentally, that the summer was very beneficial for you after seeing friends let go, teammates not back. What's your mentality going into this camp? Knowing, first of all, that Kyler's hurt, how do you, going into camp as the starting quarterback, how do you handle that? I don't know how many times that's happened in your career where you've gone into camp as the starter. Obviously, you don't know whether Kyler's going to be back, when he's going to be back, but what's that like for you?
Yeah, I think a few years early on that was the case, right? And then I think you're always chasing that again, right? It's a cool feeling. Like, I don't take it lightly that there's only 32 guys that get to do this, right? And at the same time, like, whenever Kyler's healthy, like Kyler's going to step back on that field and take over, right? And he's in the meetings, he's working hard, he's doing his rehab. Like, nobody knows when that day is. And so for me, it's very similar to the role I've been in the last 2 years. It's like always being ready, always studying, always learning, always preparing, always asking questions, making sure that, I'm in the best shape physically and mentally to step out on the field and play however long I need to play and do whatever I need to do, because I want my teammates on the field to know that when I step in, like, we're okay. Like, he knows what he's doing. He's going to get us in the right plays, the right calls, the right checks, and we're gonna be just fine. And that's exactly how I'm approaching it. And I think you hit it right. Like, a ton of my closest friends are gone. Right, all the old lineman guys, the Rodney Hudsons, the Justin Pughs, like those guys that you're close with, they're closer in age to you, that you just the toll that this game is taking on their body, but everybody loves it. They're just gone, right? And Cliff and Cam, and just I could go down the list. Like, that's a hard process to go through emotionally and mentally. And now I feel like through this break, I'm in a way better place, and I'm ready to go back and play football, right? I'm ready to see what this team can do, and we're going to go build this team in training camp. And I'm certainly all in, and I'm fired up for the new staff and for Coach Gannon and Coach Petzing, these guys who are implementing their new systems, and you're spending a lot of time with them, and I believe in them. And Monty, I've had great conversations with Monty. Like, they are a great staff, and they have great energy, and this is a totally different team than the team that we had last year. But I think we're all excited, and we're all ready to go build this thing and see what we can do. And however many games I get to play, like, I understand, the opportunity that is, and I'm going to go give it my all.
The first podcast for this was with Kurt Warner, and Kurt mentioned on this podcast, and I think he had probably said it elsewhere, but I wasn't 100% sure that that's not the first time I heard this. He said going into 2009, he knew he was done, because that was his last game, was the Bounty Gate game in the playoffs against the Saints. He gets blindsided and ended up retiring, and a lot of people thought it was because of that. But he had already made up his mind. The reason I bring that up is after the hit in Denver, which was really scary, I'm sure scarier for you, but just for us seeing it, like, you rarely see a guy get up and then collapse. And I don't know what all you remember, but did you start to think, given you've had other concussions, right, prior to that, and you're in your mid-30s, you've been doing this a long time, how long did you think, hey, you know what, maybe it's time? Or were you like, I want to finish strong. Right. I don't want to go out that way.
Right. Well, I think ultimately I was protected by a lot of people in the building by not playing late in the season, right? And then you go through the process of what you kind of do every year is just evaluating how your body feels. Like, I did a lot of cool treatments. I say cool, it's just newer technology and things that they can help you with as far as, after concussion. And I just was reacting to how my body felt, how my body responded to some of these treatments. And again, that's all part of this process of figuring out, okay, what does this next year look like, right? A lot of my boys are gone. Like, a lot of the people in the building are new. Like, you're coming off a concussion. Like, you had a little elbow stuff. Like, but at the same time, like, I prayed a lot about it, right? I think I lean on my faith more than anything else in my life, and definitely want to follow that and understand, like, okay, like there's always a time and a place for everything. What does this season look like? And I feel like everything in my life pointed back towards getting myself healthy and then seeing what happens. And this all is part of the plan. And I feel stronger. I feel better. My arm feels good. My mind is ready. I know there's going to be challenges. There's challenges in every year, right? But I'm in a place where I'm ready to take on those and play as well as I can and go into this training camp with the mindset of, being the best version of myself and leading this football team to the best of my ability for however long they ask me to do that. And I can't wait. I'm excited and I'm thrilled. And it's all new, right? It's new system, new coaches, new players. Like that, it's in my mind, it's just I'm hitting a refresh button, and let's go see what happens here.
What are your biggest takeaways about the offense so far?
I've enjoyed learning this system, right? I've learned a bunch of systems in my career, right? I think my first 5 years in the NFL, I had new coordinators, which is always tough, but at the same time, you turn things into a positive, and I've seen a lot of different systems and different philosophies and different ways to do different things, and I feel like the way that Drew has presented his offense to us is great. Like, he has a plan, he has a purpose, he has a reason. Every time I ask a question, he's a very good teacher. He's smart. It's first time calling plays. But he knows what he wants it to look like, and he's assembled his offensive staff, and they're all on the same page. And there's never a doubt of what we're doing or what we're trying to accomplish. When we have the ball in our hands, and so it's been great. And I think he's going to be very multiple. He's not going to be just you're not going to. We're going to play in a lot of different personnel groups. We're going to utilize all the guys that we have. I think, in this league in 14 years, like it's players, not plays. And a lot of teams do the same stuff. But for us, I'm excited to go into training camp knowing that, like, we all trust in what Drew has brought us. We learned and chipped away at a lot of different things in the offseason. I think a lot of it will take shape, and we'll figure out what's really going to be our bread and butter as we get into the season.
I heard you say in a recent podcast that the footwork is a lot different. And, for the fans, for us, it's hard for us to understand, okay, what does that mean? What does that look like? So why is that such an adjustment for a quarterback when the footwork in the system is different?
Well, I was thinking about this during this break. So I started playing football in 7th grade. So 7th and 8th grade, plus 4 years of high school, 5 years in the NFL, or 5 years in college, and 14 in the NFL. That's 25 years, I think. I went to UT if my math is good.
I went to Syracuse, so I can't help you. Sorry.
So, I mean, just for you and for the fans, like, as a quarterback, like, everything is rhythm. Everything is timing. Everything is like, when you get out of that, like, bad things happen. But I've played with my right foot forward in the shotgun or underneath the center for 25 years, since 7th grade. And we were running some shotgun in 7th grade. I ran, the speed option, right, get off the midline, right? Like, but then as you get older, like, you develop, like, your comfort and your stance, and, like, it becomes second nature. You don't think about it. Well, this offseason, Drew really wanted me to go with my left foot forward in the shotgun. And when I tell you that's not easy, it's not easy. But I'm feeling a lot more comfortable with it. It's something that Drew really believes in, and I want to do it how he wants to do it, and so I've really, really worked countless hours making sure that that becomes second nature, and by the time I get into training camp, next few days, I'm gonna do my best not to even think about it.
What's it like to have a coach that's your age? Drew Petzing is the offensive coordinator. You're the same age. And I know you're close with Sean McVay, and in Washington, I think Sean probably at the time was maybe 5 years older than you. Well, he still would be, right?
No, Sean's 5 months older than me.
That's it?
Yeah. Sean and I are, we're basically the same.
Why does it feel like Sean's been around forever, yet he's still 36 years old? I didn't realize. For some reason, I thought he was older than you by a few years. Okay.
He's 37 now, but we're like 5 or 6 months apart. Yeah.
How about, are you older than Drew? Have you figured that out?
I'm older than Drew. I'm about a year older than Drew.
Okay. Is that weird to be older than your coach?
I was older than Cam last year. Cam Turner.
Oh, yeah.
Kevin O'Connell and I are like really tight. Kevin's, I think, 2.5, 3 years older than me.
So you're used to this, is what you're saying. This is not a big deal. Okay.
I actually think it's not as big a deal as what people may think. Like, Drew's been around a lot of football.
Yeah.
He's learned from the best that's ever done what he's doing, right? And I don't think there's any sort of like problem with him coaching me hard or getting on me or no, this is what I want. Like that relationship has been great, right? There's an ultimate respect factor from me and from everybody, just because, like, again, I mentioned it early in the podcast, like, there's nothing easy about this league, right? And guys who get to the top like this, like there's a respect factor there that just is, it's there. I mean, and our relationship has been solid. Because
you have a new coaching staff, you have a first-time head coach, first-time offensive coordinator. Are you more involved? Do you think, in game planning, in talking to your teammates? I mean, you're always very vocal and very encouraging and positive, but do you think there will be more of that since you're one of the few holdover leaders of not just the team but the organization?
Yeah, I think we'll see, right? I think, as you get going in training camp and as you start putting those first game plans together, I think that it will all be done together. But at the same time, like, my goal going into this camp is to know and learn the offense as best as I can before we go out there for week one, right? That's still a work in progress. And so I don't know that, like, my ideas and what I want, I was involved, to an extent, especially the last 2 years with Cliff and with Cam and those, but you knew the system well. I think we're getting to a point where we can get there. But any plan that gets put together, whether it's Kyler or me or whatever, or on any team I've been on, there's always that, coach to quarterback, like, hey, okay, here's our third down menu. What do you feel most comfortable with? Like, there's always that communication like that, and that's crucial, right? To the play caller and the quarterback to be on the same page of what we like and don't like and what we're seeing and being able to adjust in games. Like, the goal is as we build this thing over the next month is to be able to get on that same page, and that's when things click.
A couple more, we'll get you out of here because I know you have a physical here. We're taping this just before 9 a.m. I watched Flight Plan. I don't know if you got to see it at all, and Kyler, as well as anybody, but watching him there, I was really encouraged by his maturity. Seems like he's grown in a lot of ways. I don't know, in your conversations with him or watching him rehab, what you've been able to glean, because obviously it's a big year for him coming off an injury. It's as much adversity as he's probably faced in his athletic life coming off this injury. And having to learn a new system, the footwork being different, it's got to be a challenge, I would assume, to be able to, watch it and know that you have to do it and then actually be out there doing it and then do it in a game. What are some of the things you've been able to glean from kind of watching Kyler go through this and in your conversations with him?
Yeah, Kyler is, he's the ultimate competitor. So, I think he's attacking his rehab. He wants to be out on the field. He's good in meetings. There are some things that are going to be different. Like we are going to huddle. We are going to call plays in the huddle. We're going to use a lot of different mechanics than what we did last year, right? And so just from the very beginning, there's a lot of things to learn. But Kyler has jumped right in. He's doing the things that he can do without actually being out there and calling the plays and running the plays, right? But I bet he's out there sooner than later, would be my guess, just because he's a competitor and wants to be, and this is new. And so I'm excited for him. I think anytime you go into something that's new, right, it takes some time to learn and to feel comfortable with. And we talked about footwork, or we talked about just the overall operation. Like those are things that he's going to have to learn on the fly. Because the moment that he's ready to play, he's going to go play. And so a lot of anything that I do, or what Drew coaches, or sometimes some of the conversations we had this spring were like, hey, we haven't done this before. I haven't done this in a long time. This was a little. I need more reps at this. So as you're going through your rehab, this offseason, remember that this play's a little bit tricky. Like maybe it was the footwork, maybe it was your eyes, maybe it was the throw was, got to be more up and down than on a line. Like different things that I could tell him after getting the rep that remember this, right? And so our communication has been really good, and I recognize and know that injuries are hard. They're hard emotionally, they're hard physically, they're hard mentally, and all your energy most days are going into fixing that, right? We've all had significant injuries. I think for him, we'll know when that light bulb comes on, okay, I'm getting over this and I'm ready to really soak up this information so that the moment I can get out there, I'm going. And I'm excited for him when that clicks.
Last one, and most important one, where are we with the family dog situation? Because my wife and we are 1 year away from being empty nesters. We've talked about it because we have not had a dog, and I don't think we're going to go down that road. Because I know this is something that the kids have pushed you on, correct? But you said it's a retirement thing. You'll worry about it much later.
Yeah. Well, listen, my kids can't even clean their rooms. Okay? They can't already make their beds. Without us just hounding them to do it. Pick up the toys, clean your room, make your bed. There's some response. So, during football season, there's no chance. I love dogs. I grew up with labs. There's no chance we're going to have a dog right now, right? And I've told my kids, and some of them cried, and I'm just someday, go play with the neighbor's dog. That's great. Enjoy that. Justin Pugh has 2 golden retrievers. He brings them to the house all the time. The kids love it. And they run, they play, and then they cry because I won't get them a dog. I'm like, guys, someday I would love to get a dog, but until you can prove to me that you can make your bed and clean your room and not have, me and your mommy picking up everything behind you, what makes me think that you can clean up after a dog or make sure that the dog lives by giving it water and giving it food? There's so, and so I just ended up saying, guys, when I retire, we can talk about having a dog. And so half my kids want me to retire, half my kids want me to play.
Well, we hope you keep playing, Colt. It's always fun talking to you. Thanks for spending some time with me. Appreciate it.
You betcha, man. Thanks.